Sarah Lewis, really happy to be here talking about your book in the BMI series on creating energized commitment to the dialogic approach, the change team's journey of discovery. And I thought we'd start by asking you to tell us a bit about how you got into this field. How did you become a dialogic OD consultant?
Yeah, it's a long journey really of working with change. So I started working in the field of social work. So I was trying to produce change in dysfunctional families. And then I and then I found myself working in management with organizational teams and realized that I wanted to produce change with them as well in terms of the ways they were working and the ways they were thinking. So that was kind of more about change. And I started training in change techniques. And so I became a systemic consultant, working with an organization in the UK, did my psychology qualifications and so on. And during that process, I came across a priest of inquiry, which seemed to me to be a wonderful approach to change in human groups, living human systems. And of course, that is a dialogic approach to change. And while that was one of the first I became aware of, the field has grown kind of enormously, as you know, and a lot to do with yours and Bob's influence. And it just appealed to me because it's very psychological. It's working with people's how they make meaning, how they understand the world, how they relate to each other, how we socially construct our sense of reality that we then act into. And this all made a lot more sense to me than the kind of prescriptive, instruction based, expert telling someone else how to do something model of change. Change often needs to grow within people, particularly in complex social systems, I have found. So yeah, that's kind of how I came to it.
Hmm. And how long would you have called yourself a dialogic OD consultant? Oh, well, you probably don't call yourself that, but doing that kind of work, how long would you say you've been doing that?
So I came across priest of inquiry in the sort of 1990s, probably about 1995, 96,
Right,
and started trying to adjust my practice immediately. So
right.
yeah, quite a long time now. I suppose
Over
that's
20 years, yeah. And it
yeah,
shows in the
yeah.
work you do. There's just this, a number of people have commented that they just love your book, and I do too. I think for somebody who's trying to get a sense of what this practice looks like, it's the best book we've put out. It's just it really gives a sense of what it's like to step into an organization and do this work. And one of the reasons I reached out to you to write it for us is because I'm aware of your previous work. You've written some fabulous books. One of the best books on appreciative inquiry, I think, and then you wrote this book on positive psychology and organizations. That's just a superb textbook and well researched, and really surprising that you're not an academic. You don't get paid to do that. And I'm wondering what motivates you to do that quality of scholarly inquiry and to spend the time writing.
Yeah, I've always been or a good student. I do like learning, and I do like words, and I do like books. And so I've done 5 degrees in my life, none of which have been a PhD, I hasten to add. And I was contemplating a PhD, but I'm a terrible researcher. I can't. The project management involved in research and the analyzing data doesn't appeal to me at all.
Mhm.
And so at the same time, there was this burst of positive psychology. There was a special edition of was the American Psychologist or something, and full of positive psychology, which so spoke to me because it was so obviously the research base that we needed for appreciative inquiry, to give evidence why it worked, how it worked.
Mhm.
When people want to know, well, this all sounds very airy fairy, how does it work? It was like the evidence was there, but it was coming through from this other field. And I've come across a lot of people who put a lot of energy into doing a PhD, and then at the end of it, they can't bear to look at the material again. And so it never really reaches the light of day. It's in some folder somewhere in a university. And I just thought, well, if I'm going to put this much effort into a piece of work, I'd rather people saw it.
Yeah.
So I'll write a book,
Mhm.
and I'll research this area that just really interests me, and I'm very pragmatic. So it's the kind of so what does this mean for organizations? This all sounds very exciting, but how do you put it into practice? How does it make a difference? How
Mhm,
can it help you change things for the better?
mhm.
And I obviously have I was trained as a psychologist, which is in fact a science-based discipline,
Mhm.
as you know, or at least the the college I did it at initially was, and it was kind of drummed into us. You need to have evidence, you need to have research, you need to be able to measure things.
Mhm.
And I've never been able to escape that sort of feeling, really, that I need to be able to back up what I'm suggesting, what I'm advocating. So that
Mhm.
if someone comes to me and says, why do you think that's a good idea for our organization, I can produce some research and evidence. So yes, I
Mhm.
like both sides. I love working with people, but I also love working with books sometimes.
Right. Well, I think that's one of the things that comes through in that text on positive psychology and organizations is it's both very soundly researched and grounded in the latest research, but very practical. Like you bring that practical lens to it. Of course, in the BMI book, that's a different thing. We're talking purely practice and a story of change and following an organizational life. And and I'd asked you to, and you do focus in this book on sort of the change team that many times as a dialogic practitioner we need to create. And could you say a little bit about, in your experience, why it's so important to work with a change team and what's critical about that and being successful?
Absolutely, it's very much borne out from experience of working with organizations where either they've approached me because they want to do something different, or I'm trying to persuade them to do it differently because I think this will produce a better outcome for them.
Mhm.
And there is a difference between intellectually accepting an idea and actually realizing what it means for me. So in most organizations, the people who need to change are the people the level below me. You know, I can see change is needed. We're all right. They need to do something different. And dialogic OD is usually about the whole system, a whole system of some description. And so everybody is part of the system and everybody is going to be impacted by what we're doing. And um, so I found if I pull a change team together beforehand, it's like working with the organization in a kind of microcosm. We get a feel for what they know, the organization, I know the theory. If we can bring the two together, then we have a much better chance of designing something context specific for this organization that is likely to have a good impact. And one of the reasons you have a change team is they are robustly testing the ideas you put forward about how they're going to land with their people or a better way of framing it. But at the same time, they have to go through a journey of understanding in a more visceral way, really, what this approach to change actually means and how it works. And
Mhm.
in the book, I describe a very particular case study where this was very stark because the two of us who were asked to lead this project had very different ideas about how change happened. So, and they'd asked me to come in and bring this more dialogic way of working,
Mhm.
but they were also very worried about it because it didn't fit the mold. And
Mhm.
so there's this constant tension between me and the internal colleague I'm working with about how we can do something differently, not too frighteningly. And the team have to go on this journey of discovery, as we say, really, in the book, about what this, they are the pioneers for the organization. And the other thing is, uh, as far as possible, we want attendance to be voluntary. This isn't always possible, of course, but we want people to be active participants. We want them to want to be there and to take part in this process.
Mhm.
And once the change team have got it and can see the potential, they start to become ambassadors for the
Mhm.
project, the program, the idea. And that's what we want. We want person to person contagion about this is going to be impactful. This is going to be different in a good way. This is going to give you a chance to have voice and influence. Be there.
Mhm.
And that's what I'm often trying to get them to do is don't send out another mass email saying, hey guys, there's this event you might like to be at. Bring it up at your team meetings. Talk to people in the coffee queue about, what's going on and how it's different and what the potential is. So that they start to create a groundswell. And again, in the book, one of the stories we tell in the book is how, and this is not uncommon, one of the biggest naysayers. This is never going to work. Management won't allow us to do this. Anyway, they shouldn't be there because, people won't talk if they're there. Something clicked and he just became the complete champion for this way of working. And yeah, it was fantastic. And then he couldn't do it, couldn't do enough to make it happen. And so it's that transfer of ownership. So I initially own the idea and bring it into the organization, but they have to own it and want to make it happen. Otherwise, they're going to be saying, well, that woman told us to do something and it didn't really work or whatever. So they, to use that expression, I want them to have skin in the game. I want it to be their reputations on the line, not just mine, about how this works.
That sounds like a great piece of advice right there. Well, and anybody who asks, I say, like, if you want to know how to bring a dialogic approach into an organization for the first time, this is your book. And I hope people will take a look at it. And as well, if you're teaching Dialogic OD to people, this is the book. So thanks, Sarah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.